Hey Jesse, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate you appreciate you coming on, and I guess you're gonna sorry, it's been a while since I did the podcast. I used to do them live, so it's a little different now.
We're good.
It cut out a little bit. What did you say?
I've never done a podcast before, so
Well, all right. So, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Hellmouth. We talk to real people about their experiences with high strangeness, paranormal, cryptid, UFOs. So you reached out to me and said that you had a story. You grew up in a haunted home.
yeah, I grew up downtown Dover in this old house. I want to say it was built in 1875 or like the later half of that century. But the rumor is that somebody died while they were building the house, though I've not found any information.
Right, you didn't search out the records, the town hall, or anything like that.
Yeah, but like with some of my stories, I think it would be interesting to follow up with and like do some research, because at one point the ghost let us know what his name was. So,
all right.
Yeah, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a haunted house, and it was like a kind ghost, and like nothing ever too scary. And at a certain point we could say, Isaac, you're scaring me, and it would stop. And
So that's his name, is Isaac.
Isaac, yeah.
Okay.
Isaac.
So I guess maybe if we want to start like when stuff first started happening, we can kind of like tell the story, and then we reveal his name and all that stuff. Like, so when did stuff first start happening?
Well, my grandparents bought the house in the 70s, and so my mom grew up in the house, and then they moved to a different house in the neighborhood, and she moved back there when she was pregnant with me. Anyway, but she lived there for a long time, and she had some stories from when she was a kid of them being out in the barn and all of their flashlights going out at once and the door shutting in the barn. And the barn came down when I was like 6 years old or so. So I never had any barn experiences per se. But when I was really little, though, and my brother was a baby, we're about 3 years apart, I guess that he and I would sit in front of our mantle and laugh at something up on top of the mantle for like long periods of time. And my mom, at one point, I was like, why? Like, you were okay with that? Like, you were cool with us just like laughing and giggling at nothing for a bit? And she was like, yeah, I just got some stuff done. Like, you guys were occupied. And
Yeah. Ghost iPads,
And like ghost babysitter. So,
do you remember what was happening like while you were just staring at? No, just you were young enough that
I don't remember much about like being that little. But like things later on got a little more interesting once my brother got old enough to talk. He started saying a man, mama, man. And she kind of took it and was just like, oh, maybe he has some sort of like imaginary friend, and kind of brushed it off. But there was one weekend that we were at our dad's, and my mom had a cousin sleepover, or a friend. She has two friends named Gail, but
the Gales, yep.
it's lots of Gales. She slept in my brother's bed the night before her wedding, and in the middle of the night she woke up and there was an old man sitting at the end of the bed where my brother slept every night. So she never came back to our house after that, because
you hear a lot about children being a little bit more in tune with stuff, and then older folks not being able to really do that. So this one was all over the place, like for the whole family, no problem, would show itself.
Yeah, for sure. And like maybe just because she was in that like waking state that she was like more
in between,
able to see that. But so that confirms what my brother was saying anyway. But there was always just a lot of shadows in the hallway, in particular up the stairs. I know gets a little spooked when they're going up the stairs at night. Lots of cabinets always closing, opening. Radio would be on suddenly. My mom had tenants that lived with her for some time, and one of them said that he one night went up to his room and came back downstairs, and a bunch of lights and music were going, and so he shut it all off and went back upstairs, and then came back down about an hour later and was all again. So lots of kind of playful, like, things like that. It was also, he would show up more often when things were happening in the house, like there was work being done. He would things like move a lantern to the middle of the hallway. And my mom would come into the hallway and have to move this old lantern back. And then she'd come back and it'd be back in the middle of the hallway again.
Was the lantern something that, well, you know, because your grandparents live there, I guess. So I wonder if the lantern was left over from before you were there, or...
My mom has a lot of antique things in general, but it like definitely like an antique lantern. So it makes sense that it could have been in the house.
Yeah. Because you also hear about a lot of, like, so this was a real active, I guess I was gonna say entity, but entity is just like, you know, like a little creepier, but like an active, spirit in the house. Because, you know, you hear about the ones that are kind of like recordings of their past life, where they're walking down a hallway and they disappear into what used to be a door. But this one seemed a lot more engaged with your family than just kind of like an echo of a person.
Oh yeah, definitely. And very engaged with music also. And I think like when my family moved into the house in the 70s, like they probably loved it. My grandfather whistled and sang all the time, just like filling the house with music after it had been abandoned for some time too. Um, but yeah, music came back to play when I was making a tape when I was in probably fifth grade for music class, and I decided to make a recording of all of our family's favorite sing-along songs. And so it was my mom and my brother and myself, and my brother was in like second grade, so we all sounded like little girls.
Mm-hmm.
We sang the song called Three Jolly Fishermen, and you name the three different fishermen. And I've told this story so many times that I don't remember all of the other fishermen's names, but you go through repeat. But when we played it back, the third verse, the third fisherman, the verse goes, the third one's name is Isaac. The third one's name is Isaac. Isaac, sick, sick. There was a deep, deep man's.
That's intense.
Moved by it. We're like, that's crazy. Like, he just let us know what his name was. But we tried to make sure nobody was like on our porch. Like, it wouldn't have sounded so clear anyway, and we would have heard it, you know?
Yeah. So
But
I've spoken to some ghost hunters, and one thing that I'm very interested in is when I was like, when did they first find out like that the spirit world is like real, and when do they know for sure? Was that moment for you, or did all the other things just being like, oh yeah, I know there's something going on kind of deal, or is that kind of like the proof?
I think that was more the proof in a way, because I always had feelings about those things, and I like there was so much of it in our house that it was hard to ignore, really. But there was something so normal about it because we had just like grown up there and just been like, oh, the ghost. But there was something about, I don't know how to name to put to it, and it like
Yeah.
changed kind of, because from there we were able to say, Isaac, you're scaring me, or like, yeah, I know you're here, like, you know, just acknowledge him. And like it's kind of cool. That being said, knowing that it was proof, my grandfather, who was our landlord, took the tape after I got grated on it. And I don't know what he did with it, but we never found it again. And I was hoping that we would find it in with all of his stuff somewhere after he passed, but we never found it. And he was afraid that he would have to disclose someday that the house was haunted.
Yeah.
Which I think you're supposed to.
I guess there's no law against it. You don't have. I guess you don't have to.
No, I mean it's like a common. I feel like, but just the same.
That reminds me of like when I read this book. I didn't read all of it because it's pretty intense. I was like, I'll get back to it at some point. It's called Dying Wise, and it was just about how death is treated so much differently in the West than it is in everywhere else on the planet. Where like a lot of cultures will they'll have their deceased loved ones in the house for like up to 2 weeks, and then they'll prep them. And then I even saw something recently about every year, like I don't remember what culture it was, but they would dig up the bones of their loved ones and like parade them around and then put them back in. So when it's because I wonder if either in the past or if there was like another time, or if there's other cultures that just accept that like their spirits are in their home and just be like, oh yeah, Isaac, okay, like, all right, buddy, like, we're cool, like, leave the cabinets alone, all right, you're fucking with me, right? But like, I wonder if that's something that's like lost or something like that. I'm not sure. It's something to explore, right?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it that way. And I don't know. I just assumed that more people dealt with that, I guess, because in New England, like there's a lot of old homes and
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my.
When did I know you said that you told me off air that the family recently sold the home, but like, did you just have experiences the entire time? How often was it? Was it like weekly? Was it monthly? Was it just like an ever presence that you had while you were there?
A lot of it was like kind of ever present. And like there were things like when we were kids, we'd sit in the living room, like it was just the three of us, and you could tell when somebody was upstairs because the lights would flicker. And there was one day all three of us were in the living room and we could see somebody walking through my mom's room. And we're like, oh, Isaac's in your room. And there's that moment where it's like, it gets like, I always know when it happens, like it's really happening because my eyes like well up with tears. Even if I like knew Isaac and I knew what it was, it's still anytime it became so real, it like always manifested in like me being like tearful.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, kind of. But like I think that when the house was changing in some way, additions being built, things like that, things became more consistent and there would be things like falling, like I don't know. I don't think he liked that the addition in the back. My mom, I meant to connect with her before this, but she would have like just given me way more stories.
Yeah.
Like handle. I like the music thing has been consistent though, because when we last lived there, my husband's band, Rick Rude, practiced in the basement there. There was one day where they were all just jamming and it was a song that didn't have any lyrics to it, but suddenly there was like this harmony that came through that it was almost like a theremin or something that was like it put this harmony through and they were all like just kind of looking at each other like what the. But they recorded it that day and listening back you could hear that sound that like nobody was making. And so very interesting.
I think with especially with you saying where you become like, overwhelmed every time like there is an experience, something like that, whatever wavelength, or you can like make all these sorts of like assumptions, like dimension, wavelength, like love might be a dimension, right? You know what I mean? Like there might be some other different things where like whatever that they're able to like traverse or communicate on, that maybe like music and resonance and like, that all like kind of carried through. I'm just trying to see how like maybe if you were so affected by this presence in the music thing, like I feel like there's something there. I'm just grasping at threads because there's nobody to ask. You'd be like, yo, hey, what's up with this? Kind of deal. So I think there's something there. Is this the only experiences you have had, or have you had other experience like in other places or anything like that?
I've had experiences in other places. More, I guess, just like feeling more than like, I don't know. I guess it would have to be a place I'd be in consistently enough to like experience something out of
Yeah.
the norm. Mostly when traveling and like being in Europe, some places were really overwhelming. Like one was a dungeon, which like might just be my own like.
Yeah, you could be
Obviously,
pushing that. Yeah.
uh, but like my mom has had lots of experiences, especially at my great grandmother's house in Wyndham. So I'm definitely open to those sorts of things and like always looking out for aliens.
Yeah. Well, like I don't know if you keep up with like the alien stuff. Especially with all the drones and the UAPs and all that stuff that's going on right now. Now with the whistleblowers, we're getting the like. I think I listened to it was Jake Barber. He was a whistleblower. I'm a big picture guy. Barely remember any details. So he talked about psionics and how you can call UFOs and whatever like wavelength that operates on, and I'm open to that, but also let's get the physical stuff first, and then we can like move over to there.
Right.
So I don't even know what to think about all that stuff. Like I'm like a Schrodinger's everything. I'm like 50-50, like maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was bringing that up because I've never had an experience myself, except for maybe once. I was in my garage. I was decorating for Halloween and I'm hanging out with my dog, and then I felt a hand go across my back for like 10 seconds. And when you say 10 seconds, like you're just like 10 seconds not long, but 10 seconds of something moving across your back is a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hairs on my arm standing up. I felt ice cold and all that, and I'm trying to move my sweatshirt around, being like, oh, what, like maybe it was that. Couldn't find out what it was. I just was just like, thank you to the whatever might have been there, right? The next day, and I don't know how this even got brought up. I've got two old man neighbors. One's kind of like a crotchety old man. The other one's like a nice old man. So I was talking to the nice one, and he was like, oh, your neighbor, his wife's buried in your backyard. And I'm like, okay. And then our property, I've got a decent amount of acreage, but our property's like split down the middle, and he's got like a monument down there for his wife, and she's buried there. And I'm just trying to think of like maybe she was coming to say hi or something like that, check me out, because I go outside, I look across the woods, and 90% of the time, nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's sometimes you just feel eyes on you, and I'm assuming it's probably animals or something like that. But I had that same feeling when I was in the garage with whatever that was. So I was like, there is something about like having those feelings, and like I said, that's my only experience with that. So I don't have a lot of experience. Yeah, I don't have a lot of like to say about that, except for I was like, oh, maybe there's something. So when I'm coming home from work and I'm like, oh, something's watching me right now. I was like, I wonder if it's a ghost, and I'll look real quick in my garage to see if I could see a shadow person or something like that. And it's probably coyotes or something in the backyard.
And I guess hearing you say that, I have had like lots of things like touch me and be like, there's nothing there. Not just at my house, but it reminded me too of another experience I had where I just moved around the corner from like a generational family home where my great aunts had lived, and I had gone there to visit them as kids and stuff. But I had just moved to this right around the corner, and I woke up my first night in the middle of the night, and I like looked out my window and they were out there holding hands and just like waving to me. And I was like, it still is like that waking world where you're like, but I was like, I was just like, okay, said like, welcome to the neighborhood. And I had a friend that lived in their house, so I like went over there to visit the house. I was like,
I had a guest on when I was doing the live show on, and he had like a lot of experience like that, and we talked for, I think it was like 2 hours, and he was gonna say like he had a ton of experiences. He had one where he thought he might have been abducted by aliens, and I was like, all right, man. Well, he fell asleep and woke up on a stair, and he had something in his hand and all that. And I was like, maybe, I don't know, right? But I was talking to him. I was like, dude, are you like? I feel like you have a little bit of talent in this area. Do you feel that like maybe you should like? I feel like you should really like try to push it a little bit, like flex that muscle. Have you ever tried to do anything like that, or are you just kind of just letting these things kind of come to you, or have you ever like
I
I don't know?
guess I kind of have. Well, when we had the diner back in the day, we had a night where there was a flying saucer group that came, a local flying saucer group, and it was kind of like, I don't know, just a place for everyone to come through and share their stories. And it was really interesting to hear how different people were connected and their stories were very similar. And they ranged and all sorts of, from there were talk of lizard people and aliens and then just like odd coincidences, and it was really cool. And I didn't talk about like my ghost experiences at this. I was more there as like a facilitator kind of, but I really loved bringing people together in that way. I think like my experience with ghosts really opened me up to the possibilities of like what else is out there, and growing up in the news, aliens and X-Files and all of that, just like, that's like that next level of like, I don't know, openness.
Yeah, because we're told forever that everything's all bullshit, like, and it like discredits all these things. Oh, that was just like swamp gas, or like all these different things. I think there is something. Obviously, I think there's something to all this, but I don't know if we'll probably never find out until we actually die or anything like that. Have you listened to the telepathy tapes?
No.
So I don't know if you like podcasts at all or anything like that, but there is a phenomenal podcast about this reporter. She's talking to parents of autistic, nonverbal and semi-verbal autistic children, and how they're exhibiting signs of telepathy. And then it's like, I think it's like 8 or 9 episodes. You'd figure like, okay, 1 or 2 episodes, like I get it, right? It escalates and it gets crazier and crazier. And the reporter is being like, hey, there's a lot of grift in this space. Let's try to see what's provable and all that kind of stuff. The reason why I brought that up is because back maybe 15, 20 years ago, I was a freelance artist, and I got a hold of the remote viewing guideline or remote viewing instruction manual for the government. I'm sure you're aware of the remote viewing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a hold of it, and I'm like, I'm going to learn how to do this, right? And I'm like reading everything, and all it did is talk about how all of humanity's knowledge and consciousness is floating just like above us in the ether, right? And we are kind of like radio receivers, and it was teaching you how to open up and not, because like, how there's like some animals that can only see like lights and darks because it's all they needed to survive. Like human beings, we developed what we developed to be able to survive. But anyway, it was just saying like your radio receivers, you can take in all this information, but you have blocks on you because otherwise you go crazy, couldn't handle all that stuff. And then I got to the chapter, it was a lot of meditation and it was all that kind of stuff. Then I got to the chapter of where it said, now you need an experienced remote viewer. And I was like, well, that's that. Can't go any further. So like the older I get and the time I just keep cobbling together like all these things like that, there is some kind of like another realm in which people draw from. Either it's consciousness, it's like other entities and all that kind of stuff. And it's I think that like spirits might be like the bleed from that, and not to take over the podcast, but like
Yeah, for real though.
there was a I spoke to a woman that was a tarot card medium, and I asked her, I was like, how come we only hear from spirits that have died within the last like 200, 300 years? I'm like, do spirits have a span on the other side kind of deal? And like, we were able to talk to a couple of them, talk to somebody from the year 1000, and they were just like, we're happy I didn't move along because all my friends are here. And I'm like, cool. We talked to somebody who did move on, and they said that they felt they were being punished and that they were in hell. And then I had a couple drinks. It was 3.5 hours on. I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta also. So I was like, let's pick this up later time. But trying to like see. Oh yeah, and another person was just saying like, the spirit realm is just another dimension, and there's all these different entities that are swirling around in it and all that. So like, when you get little tiny like peaks in stories with yours, it's fascinating because I'm like, all right, there's still like magic in the world, which, you know, stuff's coming from other dimensions maybe. Like, how does that even happen? I'm very extremely fascinated by all that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there are times where like I feel like I'm back up to that ability or like that openness. There might have been a period of time where I was closed off a little bit, and I feel like kind of a reconnection.
Plus, culturally, like you talk to people, like, I instantly am put off by like, you know, the 50-year-old lady that's wearing all these beads in the floor, and she's like, "Oh, I talk to ghosts." I'm like, "Do you? Do you?" Like, and now as I'm approaching those ages, I'm like, "Well, maybe."
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So going back to your experience, so like, what does your brother remember when he saw the man that would be in the bed? I know he's very young. Does he have any recollection?
Yeah, I don't think that he does. I think that he remembers the stories more so and his own experiences, which were probably similar to mine, just like shadows and, just like knowing someone is there sometimes and just be like, all right. And sometimes it was fine because we were like home alone, like latchkey kids. Like it kind of felt, I made a joke the other day when I was talking about when I was doing this that Isaac was kind of like my ghost stepdad that I would kind of like I roll my eyes at sometimes and like Isaac, but
And it was because he was so present, like growing up, but that's why you were able to like not really get freaked out by it.
yeah,
It was always there, so you're like, okay, whatever, you know.
it wasn't, I mean, it was never malevolent. Like there was no ill intent of like this spirit. Like it was always really playful, like things that like my grandfather would do to like prank and just be like kind of annoying and like just to, like, I don't know, get your attention kind of. And I don't know, sometimes I think that like for my mom, I know her experience was like when she was going through things that like Isaac would kind of be a call to like focus on something different. Like if she was really stressed and worried about whatever number of things she had to be worried about, like, I don't know, like things would happen and she'd be like, right, I'm focusing on my kids and like yeah, I don't have to worry about that right now, and like kind of being more present. I don't know. It's like a ghost teaching you to be present.
Yep, stepdad giving a clap on the back, you know. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. So, when your family sold the house recently, did they disclose that there was a ghost present or possible, or the realtor do that? Do you know?
I know the house was sold as is.
As
I don't
is with yeah.
could imply ghosts for sure. And I think that people knew in the neighborhood anyway. Just like our family had lived there for so long, and there were many other families that had lived there just as long. So I feel like things word kind of got around. But the guy who bought it had lived across the street for some time too.
Okay. Yeah, he knew all about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, And it's like a ghost that's not, gonna cause any problems. It's not as.
Yeah, you're not getting nails raked down your back every time you try to take a shower.
No, so I still had friends that wouldn't come over though, because they knew about the stories and it scared them, and that was okay too.
Yeah.
I just went instead.
Yeah, they get to choose their level of involvement.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Jessie, thank you for telling me your story. I would love to see if you ever pursue this, because I feel like you are right on the edge of like maybe being one of those bead ladies.
Yeah, I do. So I just, I'm very, I try to be in touch with all things around me, the earth and
Yeah. And like it's another component of life that materialism is kind of pushed away. Maybe it's always been there, and well, it's always been there, but it's just something we kind of forgot about how to live with and interact with.
For sure. Well, thanks for having me. It was fun
Thanks
chat.
for telling me a story. Appreciate it. If anything else comes about, reach out and I'll have you on again.
All right, sounds good.